Dan in Villa Park, Illinois. Hey, Dan, what's on your mind today?
Well, you're talking about all of these cuts to social good programs. I'm not going to call them welfare. We're helping out our neighbors, and that's a good thing.
Yep.
It's going to increase something that we don't measure, and that's the desperation index. Crime's going to go through the roof for people living on the edge.
Yep.
That's going to allow them to boost police, military budgets, and, of course, our friends in the private prison business will be making giant profits off the misery that was created. I was going to call it a law of unintended consequences, but I don't think they're unintended.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. Do they actually intend these consequences, or do they just not care? And I suspect it's more that they just don't give a damn. They just want to take the money and run.
But they know when we say unintended, it's like, oh, that was a mistake, we'll fix it. That's why I won't use that term.
Oh, they're continuing to proclaim that everything's perfect. This is exactly how it should be. It's don't worry, be happy, trust us. We're.
I'm a 59-year-old white guy who got dumped in the last recession, and those of us that were 45-ish to 60 at that time have become absolute ghosts in this economy. And I tell the story. When the height of the recession was going, they couldn't discriminate people based on age, but because we were a huge segment of those thrown out of work, they could simply say those not employed currently need not apply. And what that did is it took all of us off the table.
Right.
And we could apply anyway, but it was going to get thrown out by a computer, or once it got through the computer, it was just going to be tossed. They weren't going to talk to us. Now, me personally, if I'm going to feed people, I don't want to feed people who just ate. I want to feed people who are hungry. But that's me. But what we're doing here is we're trying to make people desperate. Desperate people do desperate things, and then we put them in prison. And, then our 13th Amendment kicks in, and we don't get, we don't get to vote. And it just goes on, and it's all circular. So
Charles
that's
Blow,
all I have.
Yeah, Dan, you nailed it pretty well. Charles Blow wrote a piece in today's New York Times that is titled "GOP Visions of Tectonic Realignment," and I'm going to do a little more lengthy rant grounded in that piece for tomorrow's program. But essentially, he's pointing out what you're pointing out, that they're packing the courts. They've packed the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell, violated every precedent, and I would say law. Violated the Constitution for a whole year to keep Merrick Garland off the Supreme Court, and instead put probably the most right-wing Supreme Court justice in our lifetimes on Neil Gorsuch, whose mom Ann just destroyed the Environmental Protection Agency during the was it Reagan administration or Nixon? I think it was Reagan.
Absolutely the most corporatist of all of them.
Yes.
If not,
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
this is what's going on, and you said it really well. Dan, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Well said. Barbara in St. Paul, Minnesota. Hey, Barbara, what's on your mind?
Well, how are you doing today, Citizen Tom?
I am alive and kicking. What's up?
Well, praise the Lord for that. Just what you were talking about, economics.
Mm-hmm.
And I was watching this comedian. He's very crude, so I can't use any of the language that he used.
Thank you.
But what he said made the most sense in the world. What they're doing is they're covering up what they're doing behind everybody's back and putting out this the husband's things and the abusive of wives and Trump ain't this and Trump ain't that. We already know all this. This already we know. Let's push this aside. Let's stop giving Donald Trump and his cohorts credit for nothing. Let's stop it. Really. I hate to sound like I'm yelling, but I'm tired of hearing about it. There are still people in the streets that are looking for jobs. There are people in the streets that are about to lose their homes. There are people in the street that are about to be evicted from their apartments. They're cutting their Social Security. They're cutting their Medicare. All this has been going on for at least a year when Donald Trump first got in office. As for Donald Trump's budget, I don't think he wrote that budget. I'm going to sound stupid. I think it's that Stephen Miller.
Oh, yeah, and Mick Mulvaney.
He hates America. He hates this country, and people need to find out why. And if you notice, everybody else is gone. Everybody else is gone. Everybody else is gone, but him.
Yeah, and he's the white
What is he
supremacist
there
in chief,
for?
I think.
Beg your pardon?
I said I think Steve Miller is the white supremacist in chief. His inclinations and his leanings in that direction are, I know, fairly obvious to me. I think it's and
yeah, it's
this
it's scary. I'm not scared because as a person of African American heritage, we know how to take a little, and do what we have to do with it, stretch it as far as we can, even we possibly stretch it. But there are people that don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
There
And
are
Trump
people that's going to kill people to eat. There are people that's going to kill people to have clothes on them. It's going to be very, very scary. So let's have a war with Iran and take people's mind off that. Maybe the unemployed youth that are wandering the streets that don't have nothing to do, maybe they'll join the service and we'll have more people to fight in our army.
Right.
This is what this is all about, and people are not paying attention. The folks that voted for Trump are going to get dumped on, and they're going to get dumped on heavily.
Yeah, absolutely. And except for the Make America White Again part, and that's the core of Trump's immigration policy. And he's saying to the Democrats, yeah, no problem. I'll even legalize the Dreamers, even a million of them. I'll give you more than you already have. But in exchange for that, we want to block immigration, legal immigration into the United States by people coming from basically predominantly people of color countries. And
yes, I am to sit back and live in one of the greatest countries on earth. People, don't get me wrong. We have to fight. We have to struggle. We have struggles here in this country. This is one of the greatest countries on earth. I said one of the greatest countries on earth. But we need to start voting with our pocketbooks and not with our thoughts about, okay, the black man was in office and we don't need a woman in office. And it's starting to get really silly.
Yep.
And the stuff that's going on, and I'm going to hurry get that time because you got other people. You run out of stuff to think about, and you run out of stuff to say. I can't keep expressing it more and more and more. Citizens, read up and see what the word citizen means.
Right.
Martin Luther King was a citizen. John Kennedy was a citizen. Barack Obama was a citizen. All these men were citizens.
Yeah.
And they care about you and me.
Yeah, and Donald Trump is a troll. Barbara, I do have to move along, but thank you for your call. Very, very well said. Chris in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. Hey, Chris, what's up?
Hey, how you doing, Tom? I just wanted to give you a little brief history of my Social Security disability, trying to get it, that is. I've been off work for 2 years.
I understand 2 years is about the average period of time it takes to get Social Security disability.
They are 22 months behind schedule, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a fourth-generation steel worker. I've got 30 years in the mill. I can't work anymore. I mean, even just the scripts, I'm unhireable. But they just play it out and play it out and play it out, and it makes it impossible for people. I mean, I'm looking at losing a house, losing a car, losing a wife, and you've got poor people out there now that are giving up, and while I still have life insurance, what should I do? You know what I mean? Yeah. And we should not have to think like that as Americans.
I agree. I agree.
I'm a fourth generation steel worker in this country, and we're the only steel company that still makes armor plate in this country.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yep.
That's scary. But that's not just me. I just wanted to.
But this is Chris. This is what one of the reasons why this budget also has a multi-$100 million cut to the administration of the Social Security office is because they want that 22 months that it takes you to process your Social Security disability claim. They want that to become 36 months or 48 months. They want you to give up or die after a couple of years of trying to get your Social Security disability.
And that's what they want. They hope that I die before I get it.
Right, and pretty soon they're going to be doing the same thing to people just wanting to get Social Security. Right now you got to show up in the month before you turn 65. Pretty soon it's going to be you got to show up 6 months before you turn 65 because it's going to take that long to process the forms because they had to lay off another 5,000 Social Security employees or whatever it is. Right. Chris, this is their game plan. Break it and then yell about how it's broken and how Citibank can come in and run it better. I got to move along, but Chris, thank you for the call. Corky in Hilton, New York. Hey, Corky, what's up?
Hello, Tom. Yeah, they don't understand economics, do they? Because you think
they're just grabbing everything they can get. Anything that's not nailed down, these Republicans are going to try and grab for themselves and for their billionaire patrons.
They're making the perfect storm.
Of course.
Because you take money away from people. You cut their Social Security and make it so difficult they can't get it. And then you cut back a
$400 billion cut to Medicare? That's breathtaking.
Yeah, and you make it possible to buy guns that much easier.
Yeah.
Now, what you're doing is you're devastating a population financially, and then you make it easier for them to get guns. Here comes the perfect storm.
Yeah.
What does a desperate man do? You know, the guys in the foxholes in Vietnam, when they were being overrun, they didn't sit there and die. They jumped up and ran at the enemy and killed as many as they could.
Yeah.
These guys do not understand what a perfect storm is. When you make people destitute and they've got no hope.
Yeah, and Trump's only message, his only answer is, yeah, Ivanka and I are going to continue making our crap in China, and, you know, if you don't like it, eat cake. You know, it's like, let them eat cake, and that worked out real well for Marie Antoinette, didn't it? Corky, thank you for the call. Not that I would recommend a guillotine, but perhaps a political one, you know, the political equivalent. You know, off with their office.